Hello! I do hope you can hear me. I'm waiting for the thumbs up, but in the meanwhile, hello to everybody who is in the chat. Good grief, there is a lot of chat going on. Hello, Kim. Hello, Karen. Who else have we got? We've got Tish. Oh, the usual suspects. Hello, Renee. I'm live. Hello, Peter. Jammy's in there as well, I believe. Or is he not? Oh, and hello to... That's an interesting name, isn't it? Slummy Rachel. I love it. Slummy Rach. Brilliant. Greetings from a digital creator who's recently found you. Well, I hope you're enjoying it. Right. Let's get on then. I'm assuming we've got quite a few new people who are here because it's scrapbooking. So let's get on with it. Right. Oh, you know, as soon as I click, I get a load of windows from all my other stuff. But hopefully you can see me as well as hear me. Let's get on. So we're broadcasting in 1080p. Make sure you're receiving in 1080p, either live or later with the replay. There is a cog in the lower right-hand corner. It should have a red flash on it. That indicates that you're watching in HD. If that's not there, click the drop down and choose 1080. While you're down there, it's really close to the like button. So you could hit that while you're there, couldn't you? Now, as I say, there are many people who are here because it's scrapbooking. So if you've never heard of me, I'm Elaine Giles, long-time Affinity user, complete expert, since the original Affinity designer. It was released as a beta in 2014, and I was very excited at the time, and I've used the Affinity apps every day since then. Right, I'm demonstrating on a Mac tonight, but everything I talk about is just as relevant to the PC version. It is, however, the new version, and that is not yet available on iPad. It is supposed to be coming Q1 this year, but who knows? Not seen sight nor sound of it since the announcement, which is a good couple of months ago now. Where if I say Command and you're on Windows, just substitute it for Control. There are a couple of shortcut keys where it is actually Control, even if you're on a Mac. So I will say that then. I will try and remember to include the Windows shortcuts. So what do we have tonight? Well, in this session, we're going to start with working with layouts, where you can get layouts from, and actually working with layouts. But then I'm moving on to creating custom layouts, using the features of Affinity to generate entire layouts. Then I'm going to do a very quick intro to picture frames. If you've been with me before, I've talked about that before, but you know you can never hear it too many times. Then I'll be working with scrapbooking stock, and some of it is better than other bits. So I'll show you what to do if the stock you've got is a little bit limited. And that is by adding features from Affinity to standard stock. Then we've got creating custom scrapbook assets, as well as making magic with shapes. A lot of the assets and packs that you can buy for scrapbooking make a lot of use of shapes, but shapes in Affinity are intelligent shapes. They are actually called smart shapes. And a lot of the assets that I've seen, not smart enabled at all. So I will show you what I mean by that. Then we're bringing it all together in a final layout. I will show you how to create custom assets because I will be using some custom assets as we go through. And of course, we have our Q&A at the end. And there is a bonus, so hang around for the bonus. Right, in relation to the Q&A, put your questions in the chat as we go. We will collect them ready for the Q&A at the end of the session. If there's a lot of questions, I might stop halfway and take some of those questions as well. If you can remember, please put a Q at the beginning. It just makes it a little easier for my assistant here to find them, doesn't it, Mike? Yes, he's nodding furiously. And the other thing to do is, if you're mentioning something with a question, give me a little bit of context. Sometimes I get, can you show me that dialogue? Or where was the option in that dialogue? And it's 10 minutes later and I've no idea which dialogue you're talking about. So just give me as much context as you can and I'll be happy to answer all of the questions. Right, we love to read the chat. The chat is usually amazingly busy, as if you are with us live, you will have discovered. But please keep it friendly in there. I'm not affiliated with Canva, nor Affinity, never have been. I'm a customer of both, and that is it. So, without further ado, and without When we do other sessions and I'm introducing a concept, it's quite often that we have sort of 5 minutes of slides going straight into it today. Nothing to show you on slides, going straight into it. Right, I have Affinity open. If you are a beginner with this version of Affinity, the most important thing to understand that this version of Affinity is 3 previous separate applications rolled up into one. Which might sound a bit strange. How on earth do you do that? Because if you think of Word, Excel and PowerPoint, just imagine shoehorning them into one interface. That wouldn't work very well, would it? Well, how they've done it is to use these studios that you will find at the top of the screen. The Vector Studio is the equivalent of Affinity Designer, and that is a vector application. You may have used Adobe Illustrator. That's another vector application. The Pixel Studio is the same as Affinity Photo used to be. So this is the nearest bit to Adobe Photoshop or any other bitmap editor that you may be using. And Layout is the studio that is the nearest to Affinity Publisher. Now you may find when you open your application that you have another studio. And that is, I think it's a purplish one. It is Canva AI. So your interface may look like that. I'm not using Canva AI. Not for anything, I'm not. So I turn it off, give myself a little bit of screen real estate back. But other than that, your interface should resemble mine. It won't look identical because I will have different panels open than you may have open. But at least the top should look the same. Right, okay, so let's get on with the first thing. So following on from last week when we designed a trifold brochure, which was a Chinese menu, I decided that the first layout I would look for scrapbooking would be a background for a layout that's kind of Chinese. So I downloaded this file. And you will find I will put all of the links for these together, and I will put them in the description, and I will send an email tomorrow. If you're normally with me, you'll know that one, I've got a mad busy weekend, which is why it's 7 o'clock in the UK, not 3 o'clock on a Sunday. So I've had a day less, so I haven't put all of the links together. But I've unpacked that, and what I get here is 2 files. I have a JPEG, and I have an EPS, which is a vector file. Now, I would normally recommend, no matter what job you're doing, if you've got a vector file, use that, because it's more editable. But I'm going to start off by looking at the JPEG. So let's open the JPEG, and there we have a background that we can start to use for scrapbooking. But I want to point out the difference here, and also point out what happens when you use stock. Now that is a JPEG. It's a single layer. It is editable up to a point, but it's pixel based. So if I wanted to select one of the lanterns, it would be a bit tricky. And even if I did, and then I moved it, there'd be nothing behind it, because I would have cut out the one layer of pixels that is in a JPEG. That is why it's always better to use a vector if you've got one. Now I've just opened here, so you now see I've got 2 files open. I've got the JPEG open and I've got the EPS open. And you can see that this says it's a layer, which means I can unfurl it. And technically speaking, I should be able to select the individual elements. But, and this is the problem with some stock files, this is a free stock file. I see this a lot with free files, but I've also seen exactly the same technique used when you've paid for files. So if I open this layer, you can see that we've got elements underneath it. But the issue is, although it's saying it's a vector, and technically it is, it doesn't work that well. They've kind of sliced and diced it. So as I'm selecting here, you can see it's lighting up on the canvas with a blue edge. And the thing is, if I grab one of these and I move it, it literally is like a jigsaw, which is not great, because it means I can't select just the lantern. So while I could use this as a background, and I'm just going to make sure that that all matches up again, I wouldn't really be editing it in any kind of way. This is just something you need to be aware of with stock images. So I always say when you open a file, examine the file. Have a look inside it. What layers have you got? What groups have you got? Does it have a global colour palette? Does it have saved selections? Always examine the file. So if I was examining this, I'd be thinking, well, that's great, but I can't select the lanterns and change them. Move them out of the way, make them bigger, make them smaller. Can't do any of that, despite the fact it's a vector. But as a background, if that is enough for you, then you can actually start working with it. If you were going to do that, sometimes a client is married to it. Oh no, I want that one. I've seen it. I know you could get a better one in terms of being more customizable, but I want that one. In which case, what I would do with this, so you're not doing this inadvertently, is that layer that they are on, just lock it, which you can do with the lock at the end, which you don't even see. You just need to know it's there. If you're not sure where it is, then you have this lock icon here, and it does exactly the same thing. And obviously you can unlock it by clicking the lock, or if it's locked, you can click there to unlock it. So either of those icons work, but in this circumstance, with a file like this, you can't really do much with it anyway. So don't bother. Just leave it like that. Right, so that is our first background. Now, there are other things that you could do here. So one option would be to make your own background. Now, to do that, you're going to need elements to bring into it. So for this demonstration, I do have some Chinese elements, which I could bring into this file. So for example, I have let's have a look, we've got a lantern here. So I could actually bring this in. Now you will get this message. You can't stop it. It drives me insane. Right, when you make a file, you choose whether you want to link the images that you add to it or embed them. I always choose to embed them so I don't lose any images. But Affinity goes crazy and is concerned that there is too much information in the file, that it will make a file that is too big. I am not concerned about that, so I'm going to say, no, I don't want to reduce the document size by linking to files, because if I move the files, they will lose their link and then I will lose my mind going to try and find them again. Right, you can see the size of this. It's absolutely huge. So let me make that a lot smaller and bring that on. And you can see that normally that's what you would want to do in scrapbooking, rather than have a fixed background like that. So if you have elements available, then you can do that. But of course, you're pretty stuck at the moment with that background. So what you may want to do is start from scratch and make a complete background. So that's what I'm going to do next. So I don't need to save that. I don't need to save the other one. I'm going to start from scratch. So Command and N will bring up the new file dialog box. And you've got a couple of options in here, depending on what it is you're trying to achieve. If you're printing it, then you may want to choose the print options. So the sized for print. The size of everything is completely up to you. So I've seen scrapbooks that people actually print out, and they print out to really thick paper. And it's got like what looks like a screw through as the binding. You will know what size you need for specifics. That's not something I'm going to be overly concerned with today. I'll be probably using A4, A3, and later on when I'm making elements, some of the sizes from down here that are just like web and video. But just for this example, we will go for something that you may print, which is A3, and I will make sure that the orientation at the top is set to landscape. Now, the rest of what you set in here is completely up to you. In terms of DPI, it's going to depend whether it's for digital or whether you're printing it. If you're sending it off for print or creating it in that way to use in that way, you may want to make sure that it's CMYK and not RGB. So RGB tends to be for digital and CMYK is for print. For this, I'm just going to leave it at RGB A3, and I'm not going to make any changes to anything that is in the right-hand side. Now, if you find that you always have the same margins or something, then you are able to create your own presets. They are listed at the top. And I know if you've used the older versions of the Affinity apps, this dialog box is absolutely shocking in terms of it's missing a lot of features. Hopefully they will add them back, but you will find your presets at the top and you only have one group of them. We used to have unlimited groups. Sadly, we don't anymore. But as I say, hopefully they'll bring it back. If you have things in your file, so content that you always have, maybe a signature or something, then you may want to make a template of it. But what we're looking at here is presets and not templates. You will find templates in your home bit here under My Templates, and these are custom to you. So you can see I've got Vivaldi speed dials and I've got stamps. I've got YouTube stuff, posters for YouTube. So these are things I have created. But obviously what I'm doing at the moment is creating a completely new file from scratch. So I will hit Create Document and I now have a background. Right, in here, I want a Chinese background similar to what I had in the other one, but I'd like to be able to edit it. So I'm going to start off by adding a shape. Now, for this use, I'm treating this as a simple shape. There are, as I've said, smart shapes. All shapes in Affinity are smart shapes. Some are smarter than others, but it depends what you want to do with them. And for this, it's just a background. So that's fine. Don't need to do anything special with it. What I do want to do with it is add a gradient to it. Now, at the moment, what on earth is going on here? It's hidden the wrong thing, hasn't it? I want to see that. I do not want to see. That's what I want to see. Right. And in here, I'm going to go to the vectors and I'm going to press the G key. And what that is going to do is take me to the fill tool, but it's the gradient in there. So this is going to give me a gradient. Now, I can just draw a gradient. And that is how you would add a gradient. Just click where you want it to start, click where you want it to finish, and you're good to go. You may wonder why I'm doing it to one side rather than in the middle. A lot of people go straight to the middle and draw the gradient in the middle. A gradient doesn't even have to be from top to bottom. It could be from one side to another. It doesn't even have to stretch the full width. It could be anything. You've even got a midpoint that you can change, and you can add multiple points. But what I want here is fairly straightforward. So let's go back to where we were and I will answer the question, why do I draw it off center? And that is because if I want to go in and edit that gradient, I want to easily be able to select it. And when I go into here, if I'm trying to select my gradient, you can see it bang in the center. I've got the sizing handles and I don't want the two to give me grief. So I put it to the side. Now, that's a linear gradient. That's the default that you will get in here. If at this stage you think to yourself, oh, well, I don't want that colour, I want a kind of reddish colour, that will give you that at the top, as long as that colour port there, that little well, is selected. This one at the bottom wasn't selected, so it's selected when it's got the blue circle around it. At that point, you can then select a different colour. The other option that you have for that is to make sure it's selected, use this at the top, or you can go in here. Now, actually, I don't even want a linear gradient. That's not what I want. I want it to look like the one that we had. And the one that we had was a different type of gradient. So when you go into the type of gradient, you can have no gradient. You can have it solid, which isn't really a gradient, but there you go. You can have, now the reason that you think, well, that's a bit odd. Why have you got gradients in here if solid isn't a gradient? But remember that this is the fill tool. So you can fill with a solid fill. As well as linear and elliptical, radial, conical, you name it, we've got all of these options. Right, let's have a look at this one. Now what's happened when I've selected elliptical is, instead of having a single line representing this gradient, I've now got a right angle representing this gradient. So that bit there, hang on, why are you doing weirdness? Oh, don't tell me I didn't do that. Right, let's do that and try again. Right, that's better. Right, that there, the right angle that we've got, is this gradient. So I don't really want that. If I want this to look lighter in the middle than it does at the edges, then I need that in the middle. But these would then be too long. So if I take these up a bit, you can see, and I'm holding the shift key down, multiple things are happening. Holding the shift key keeps it straight. You'll notice I'm halfway up the page and I've got a red line going across. That is telling me that that's the midpoint of the page, which is exactly where I want it to be. So I'm going to let go at that point. I'm going to grab this middle bit and move that down there. And somewhere around here, I get two lines. I get the red line going across and the green line going vertically. They are snapping lines and they're showing me that that is snapping to the right place, which is in the middle. I can then take this end and stretch that out, but notice what's happening. As I'm doing that, it's moving this one because it's that kind of gradient. So you need to make a decision what exactly you need to see here, bearing in mind you can put extra points on this. So in the middle, I really want it to be a vibrant red. Now, what I've got at the minute, not exactly vibrant enough in terms of red. So I'll move that a little bit, and that is looking good for the middle. Now, the pink on the outside, not so much so. So I need that to be a different colour. So I'm going in here. That is over on the right-hand side. If I want it red, then I should bring it back here and take it up. Now, I wanted the edges to be dark, much darker than the middle. Could take it right up to the top, but I'm just getting a different kind of red. So my original red was somewhere around that point. And I can use the slider at the top to make it darker. And you can see what's happening there. Hopefully the middle is beginning to look lighter. Looks a little bit dark to me, but we'll work on that. Let me take it back a little bit. I want something where you can see a difference. So I think it would be better to lighten the middle up rather than darken the edge. So let's do it like that. But I want it quite subtle. But now we have a background on there. Now, if that's enough in terms of the colour of the background, then, and I work from the back of the image up through the layers, then at that point, lock it, and then you don't make any changes to it if that's not what you want. Now, you know that I had some images, and indeed I do. So I'm going to show you that I have these images. So these are PNGs, and I will show you what they are. These are Chinese adornments. I think they were 3D. These are completely free, so I'll make sure that they're available in the resources pack. And these lanterns are perfect. Those two lanterns are absolutely perfect. So I could drag and drop them from there. Now, if I'm working on a lot of Chinese stuff, or I'm doing this over a long period of time, there is a better way to work than just dragging and dropping them from your Finder. But for the moment, let's just do that with the first two lanterns. So dragging it on. Now remember, it was quite large. And I want it a little bit smaller than that. So all I'm doing is scaling it down. Now, one thing I could do with this, we've got a lot of space around the image that's transparent. Now, this is optional. It isn't something that you particularly need to do. But you could crop that, because I'm in the vector application here. I'm in the Vector Studio. I could crop that. I've set up a custom key for that. But what that would enable me to do is bring this in, because it's transparent pixels anyway. And that way, when I'm making selections, I'm not going to inadvertently select this one because it's got a huge transparency around it. And then I would take that just slightly over there and off. I'm holding the Option key down and dragging, and that gives me a copy. And then I'm going to make it a fraction bigger and put it on the other side. I also have another lantern, so I'm going to bring that second lantern on. Again, you can see I'm being accosted by this image policy dialog. No, still don't want to. Still know my own mind. Leave me alone. Right, so I'm going to scale this one. You can see this one has the same problem, if you consider it to be a problem. I do consider that to be an issue, because I might just want to move it slightly. And the thing is, if I put that there, like that, and I want to make it a little bit bigger, like that, fine. But then I decide that this one looks too small, so I'm going to change the size of that. When I click to select, although I'm nowhere near this lantern, it's got transparency and it's sat over the top of it. So it selected the wrong thing. So it is worth, in my opinion, using the vector crop tool, which is this one over on the left, and bringing that in so it's not tripping you up in terms of your selection like that, and then go back to the move tool. Then I can do the same with this. So hold the option key down and drag. I will move this one in. We will make that smaller and we'll have a little less showing there and put this on that side. And now we can do that. We can also, with this, start to stack it. So there'll be nothing to stop you having that over that one. Now, if you're going to do that, it does look a little odd. It just looks like it's stuck on top of it. But you do have the option here to apply some effects to it. And one of those effects is an outer shadow. So let's put a shadow on it like that. And you can see, I'll make it much bigger so you can see it, but you can see the shadow appearing around here, which gives you depth. And you can do that on any shape that you add on here. However, not if it's a JPEG, because JPEGs do not have transparency. TIFFs have transparency, Affinity files do, and PNGs do. And that's why it's working here. Now, you can do a lot in this layer effect dialog. We will be revisiting it, but if you just want a quick outer shadow, that's a good way of doing it. Again, I have seen stock for scrapbooking where the shadow is totally separate. They've literally just sort of spewed up black pixels and hidden it behind it. But in Affinity, this will stay with it. You've not got two different elements that you now need to move. All of these effects are on the layer, which is Lantern 2 here. And if you move the lantern, it moves with it. One thing to think about in this dialog box is it will move with it, but what happens if you scale it? Do you want the shadow to match the scale that you make this shape into or not? And that is the option at the bottom, which is scale with object. So with that enabled, it will scale proportionally. Without it, if you make it much, much bigger, the shadow could be lost because it's tiny. So you just need to think about, do you want it to scale with the object or not? We'll enable it. It won't make that much difference at this stage, but that is the option that you have. Right, so we've got part of a background there. We're then going to be moving on. So let me move back through here. Did I have... I did have some other icons, I think. Yeah, just shape icons. So I've got a lot of icons here that are Chinese food related, Chinese New Year, things like that. Now, obviously, to try and find the one you want in there, nightmare. There's a couple of things you can do to make that easier. If you're on a Mac, you have the option to change your view. And I think you have the same option on Windows. You can view it as icons or you can view it as a gallery and actually see that. So as you move along here, you would be able to see these and preview them. If you are serious about doing this, you may have another application like Adobe Bridge or Eagle or Media Place, and that is another way to organise them. There is a third option, depending on what it is. So first of all, I will get some of these on here. So let's make it that I can actually see that. Now, these are red, so they won't actually stand out that well, but I think we will just about be able to see it. So you can either draw this part by hand, with the shapes that you've got, or you can use things like this. So I would put that one somewhere down here. Right, now, your other option is to use assets. So you can see that there is an assets panel on the left-hand side. If yours is not showing, you need to go to Window and use these options down here, which are groupings of panels, to be able to see your assets panel. And as you should know, I do not memorise these, so let's have a look. There we go, General. That's not a great name for a menu, is it, General? Basically everything that doesn't fit somewhere else, they've shoved in General. All right. Now, when I say I don't use that, I don't. If you've been with me before, you'll know what I do. I use an application called Raycast, and that will enable me to search the menus. So how I do that, it's with a shortcut key. And I wanted assets, so I type in assets and it shows me where that menu is. So I will be using that during this session. Doesn't matter whether you use it or not. There is a Windows version of Raycast, but it doesn't yet support this feature. but it will show you visually where the menu is. So Window, General, Assets. And if I click that now or press enter, it would hide the Assets panel. So it's a toggle. Toggles it on, toggles it off. So as I'm typing in there, it enables me to use that very, very quickly. Now, what we're looking at in this Assets panel, and these are assets that are only available inside the Affinity suite. Now, when there were 3 different applications, it worked slightly differently, that you could synchronize them or not. You don't need to worry about that anymore. It's one application. But you can have multiple sets of assets. And you can see that I've got my personal branding assets, which are to do with me creating posters for my live sessions. But also in here, I have other things like my calendar creation kit and the foodie magazine that I use in demos. And you will notice that I have Chinese resources. So all of those icons that you saw in my Finder are also available from within Affinity. And all I did was add them to it. So if I am looking through this, it's far easier to do this than it is to go and crank the Finder up and then go and preview each one till I find the one that I'm looking for. To use them, I literally just need to drag and drop them and then scale them and put them wherever I want. Now, I will show you how I created that assets collection. You can buy asset collections or you can make your own. And I made my own with that one. I will show you that later. That is the last demo I will do. But it's very useful to have information like that available quickly, which is why I would do it. Okay, so we've made our own background at that point. Now I'm going to make a different background, and the reason that, yes, it's the same demo, it's another background, but it's a totally different background done in a totally different way. If you've been with me before, you will know that I have had problems with corrupt files. So I would suggest that you always save the file and then close it when you finish using it. If you leave it open and then you start doing other things and you come back to it, I have found that you can corrupt files. So it's saved. Right, the next layout that I'm going to do is a Halloween layout. And the reason that I'm doing that is I'm going to use totally different options to create the background. But it's still going to be A3 and it's still going to have a gradient as the initial background. And then we'll start deviating. So in here, I'm going to get another shape, not a smart shape. Well, it is a smart shape, but just not as smart as it could be yet. So that's my background. Now, I then need a gradient. Remember, the shortcut key for that is the letter G, and that will enable me to draw the gradient. Now, this time, this is the kind of gradient that I want. At the top of it, I want it to be quite a dark blue. So we do have some blues in here. Don't even know if they're quite as dark as I want. That's a bit purplish, isn't it? So purple's not actually bad, but it would need to be darker than that. So let's make that darker. And then at this end, I want an orange colour. So what have we got in here that's orange? It's a bit murky, isn't it? Right, but never mind, it's a starting point. So we can double click to go in and lighten it up and brighten it up a bit. So let's do that. So there we go. So I'm going to use that as the background for a Halloween style layout. Maybe a little bit darker would be better, but what I'm going to do with it, I do need to see some things. So I don't want the background that dark that we can't see them. So again, that's my background, that's my rectangle. I'm done. So that could be locked and then I'm not inadvertently selecting it. Right. What I'm going to show you is a completely different technique from the Chinese layout, which is, it's Halloween. It needs to have Halloweenish things on it and look kind of imposing. Right, how I'm going to do that is a totally different way. Now, I do have in my assets, if we go back to my assets, you can see I do have Halloween assets. Of course I do. I've got my friendly ghosts, my cute ghosts. I've got spiders' webs and I've got bats. I will be using those bats. But at this stage, what I don't have in here, and you could make some, you could download some, but I don't have any trees. So I'd want kind of very dark silhouetted trees for this background. And I don't have any of those. So let's sort that problem out first. Right, at the moment, I'm in the Vector Studio. Most times that you're going to work with the feature I'm going to talk about, you probably be in the Pixel Studio. Now, all the studios are doing is changing the tools that are available to you. So the tools we have available on the left-hand side and the interface at the top and all of the panels change depending on which studio you select. Now that means I've come into the Pixel Studio and, oh, I have brushes available. And with my brush tool, which you just need to press B, whatever you have selected in here, so let's go up to the basic ones, and you draw on here, you will, you're determined, aren't you? You're determined. I wanted you to be that one. It will just draw for you. Not looking much like trees at the moment. And you may be thinking, but I'm not artistic and now I've got to draw a tree. No, you do not have to draw a tree. Let me save you from yourself. So what I have here, I'll just show you this. I have some pictures we'll be putting in it momentarily, which is Lola, that's our lovely dog, dressed up for Halloween. Not in reality, don't panic. I've got an image and I have this file, which is called treesgrass.abr, which is an Adobe brush file. Adobe brush files are supported by Affinity. So what I will do with that is go to my brushes panel, and from the drop down, I will choose to import brushes. And it has gone to the right place, which is a good idea. It's the Halloween, and there are the brushes. Now you'll notice that at the bottom it says that's an AFPub file, which is an old publisher file. That's because that is the application that by default my system is going to use to open that if I double clicked it. So don't double click it, because it could open in anything. If you had Photoshop installed, maybe Photoshop. So it doesn't matter what is allocated to open it, because I'm opening it manually in here. But that's why it's got the wrong icon on it. I haven't manually mapped that to Affinity yet. So I tap open and it gives me a message to say, successful, it's been imported. Excellent. And these are my trees. So what I can do with this, I'm just going to show you what I can do, and then we'll put some in the right place. But I choose the brush. I move the brush over. Normally, this is sort of huge. And let me just, no, it's not going to make it any bigger. Okay. Right. Normally, when you bring brushes in, they can be much bigger than the canvas that you're working on. And you need to reduce the size of the brush. So that is an outline of what will appear if I were to click the screen right now. Click the mouse. But I can choose to make that bigger or smaller with the square bracket keys, exactly the same as many other pixel-based apps. So the left square bracket makes it smaller and the right one makes it bigger. So let's have it bigger like that. And position it and click. I only clicked once. And that has given me the perfect silhouette of a tree. It's now starting to look Halloweeny, isn't it? So back in my layers, what did that do? Well, the background was a vector shape. It automatically created me a pixel-based layer to put that onto. Now, you may, at this stage, carry on clicking. So if I come over here and we add a lot more trees by clicking, they are all on the same layer as the first tree. That might not be what you want. In fact, it's hardly ever what I want. So at that point, I would think with that, okay, that's one tree. Let's lock that tree. And now when I bring this on, you're still putting it on the same layer, crying out loud. In that case, use the option at the bottom to make a layer, select that, and when you put the rest on, it's going to put it on its own layer. I don't think it should do that. If it's locked, and you should not be putting pixels on it. Right, now, we do have this layer. I'm going to go back to the brushes and just show you some alternatives that you've got. So it's not all trees in these brushes, and these brushes are completely free. I'll make sure that the link is available. So I'm going to make that much smaller. And what I can do down here, and it is slightly hanging off the screen, is just add to that to give it a little bit more depth. And just carry on doing that for Halloween. So that was adding elements from brushes. But I also said, didn't I, that I had assets. So I had some spider's webs. So let's drag that on. And we can put that in the top corner. And I've got bats. Got a funny story about a bat actually today. Mike took Lola out for a walk this morning and nearly got hit on the head by a bat. And I said, "You're not going to believe this. I was working with some bats last night." So I'm taking full responsibility for that. So I would choose the bat that I wanted. You can see I've got black ones and I've got some that are a little bit grey. There is a reason for that, which I will explain later. But let's take the one that looks like Batman and stick him on there. Now, these are quite small, but what we want to do is have them kind of flying around the trees. That one's upside down, so we could have him hanging off the tree, couldn't we? Oh, who doesn't want to play with bats on a Saturday night? There we go. And we'll have one that looks like he's in full flight, like this one here. And of course, you can make these bigger if you want. So that's a completely different way of making a layout, and that is the background of what we're going to do. So whatever you need for the background, you can either download one, you can make your own, you can use brushes for that, you can use assets for that. I mean, it's all just good fun. You are scrapbooking, albeit digitally. Right, so the next step, I'm just going to make that a little bit smaller in the top corner there. Do you know, I think we need to have another one of those, and I think we need to rotate it round and put it down there. Although it probably wouldn't be that big, would it? But there we go. Are we all having fun looking at Halloween, even though it's January? Right, so I've done 2 backgrounds. I'm now going to move on and talk about picture frames. Picture frames are critical in Affinity to how it works. And I know a lot of scrapbookers just use shapes. But this is not a standard app, is it? This is Affinity, and it's got superpowers. And it would be ludicrous to rely on shapes if you've got superpowered shapes and dedicated tools. So normally, there's your shapes. You can add any kind of shape that you want. But there is also the option to use picture frames. Now, if you look down these tools, not seeing a picture frame, you can add it, but you are in vector mode. If you were in layout mode, you would see it. So there is the picture frame tool. And there's 2 of them. There is the rectangle one that you can use to make squares as well, and the ellipse one you can use to make circles. You'll notice that these 2 in your layout view, your layout studio, are underneath all of the shapes. That should indicate to you that they're kind of related to it in a way. Now, if you're tempted to just draw out a rectangle, feel free. Let me show you the difference between the 2. Right, first thing to think about. When you have applied a fill to a shape, and you then draw another shape, it applies the same fill, which you may or may not want. In this circumstance, we don't really want that. We could do with that setting to white so we can see it. And if it had a border on it, it would be black. We may want that in a different colour, so again, so we can see it. So if I choose the brightest colours we've got in here and make that red, you can see at the moment, do we have a border on it? We do, but it's so tiny you can barely see it. Right, but we do have it there. So in the stroke panel, with that selected, if I make that a little bit bigger, you will see it like that. And I needed to do things in there that I don't think I did, but never mind. So that is a shape. Now, if I draw on instead a picture frame like that, it looks slightly different at this stage. Obviously, this has no fill because we can see the gradient through it. It's transparent. It has a border on it, but it has a big cross in it. And the big cross in it is indicating that that is a picture frame, whereas this is a standard shape. So they're not the same. I will make them exactly the same size though, and we will see the difference between them. Right. So I've got some pictures here. So I think they were in there. There we go. Right. These were they were AI generated. No dogs were harmed in this because Lola doesn't like dressing up. We dressed her up one year, never again. No. So these are AI generated. But if I drag and drop this onto my canvas, it will just drag and drop the image onto the canvas and drop it. That's it. It totally ignores both of these. Right, so we won't do that. If I drag and drop this on top of the shape, it just puts it on top of the shape. So it's not locked within it. It doesn't have a red frame on it. It just dumps it clean on top of it. If we look at the layers, you can see what's happening. There's the rectangle. There is the image. But let's get rid of it again. If we were to drag and drop it onto a picture frame, magic happens. It automatically gets placed within the frame, the picture frame. And now we've got extra tools to use. So we'll zoom in a bit to see Lola. It was a picture of Lola, so it's definitely Lola, but she definitely wasn't dressed up like that. Right, we have in the middle a handle to be able to move this. Now this is actually pretty much the right size. So we probably wouldn't want to move it that much. But at the bottom, we have a zoom slider to make it bigger or smaller. So let's say that I wanted to make it bigger, but now we've lost an ear and half a leg. That's when this handle comes into play and we can move it down so she's more centered in the frame. Right, that's the right way to add images. Put them inside a picture frame. And if that picture frame happens to be circular, if that's what you want, so I'm holding the Shift key down, and now I have a circle frame. Let's move that here, and drag and drop the next one. Oh, the next one was Lola as a pirate. Right, let's drag and drop Lola as a pirate. And again, you can scale this, and again, you can move that. You can also rotate. So we have another handle there. There's 3 things you can do. Move, scale, and the one at the top is rotate. Now, at the moment, that is rotate. Well, it's circular, isn't it? So it is actually rotating Lola, but because it's circular. So let's go and rotate this one instead. Right. You are rotating just the image, not the frame. So if you do want to move that around, you can do that. I think she needs to be moved back the other way before she gets dizzy. Now, can you do that with this that's a shape? Well, yes, you can. We would drag and drop another image on. So we'll have Lola as a punk this time. Right, and I'll make that bigger. All right, and I need it inside that frame. So how does that work? Well, over in your layers, there is the image selected, and there is your shape. And you can drag and drop that inside there. And now the image is constrained to the frame. But look at it, there's no handle. So this one, I can move it around. Quite happily move it around. That one, it's not a picture frame. It's not intelligent. It's not smart. So yes, I can move that photo, but I don't get the snazzy handle to do it with. How I would need to do it is open up the shape, select the image itself, and manually move it. Why do that? Don't do that. So let's make that a bit bigger. So we can see just the door there. And a Mohican. We need to see a Mohican, don't we? I can rotate that image if I wanted to. So all the features are still there. I can scale it, move it, and rotate it. But I haven't got dedicated tools to do it. And I have to go in, I have to drill down a layer. This is why we have photo tools. So there we go. Now you'll notice that we did have a border on these. Not a particularly great border, but we've got one. Right, so what I would probably be doing with that is changing this to a more Halloween-y colour. So maybe something like deep purple, deep blue, something like that. And they work exactly the same. So although one is a shape and one is a picture frame, they do work the same way. It's just that picture frames are smart. So let's add that, and there we go. And of course, these for your scrapbooking can be moved around. Each of these can have effects on it. So if we look at the mummy one first, this works if it's a shape, it works if it's a picture frame. But we do have the option to add effects to it. So if I select an effect here, and we wanted it to be 3D or all of this stuff, so maybe we want an outer shadow on it. Maybe we want that drop shadow again. So I'm applying it to be quite big so we can see it, and you should see that appearing at the bottom there. You can do that on a frame or on a shape. All of these apply in that way. We will come back and use that in a different way shortly. But that is what we have for our layout. I did have, just for good measure, 3 more pictures of Lola looking absolutely gorgeous. So let's put some more on. If you're putting it somewhere dark like that, you might want that border to be white so you can see it better. And you can, of course, rotate the frame before you put it on. So one of hers was her as a tiger. Oh, just isn't she cute? Now you see how useful this slider is and the ability to move it. because I'm working on the canvas, not on the layers. I have Lola as a unicorn, so let's put her in there. Oh, she's just too cute. Right, and again, I would probably zoom in, but I don't want to lose the horn on that, do I? Move it back there. And the last one that we had of Lola was, I'm trying to remember now. Oh, yes. I think she needs to be Batman, but she was actually Robin. So there are the images. And of course, once you've got your layout and you've got your frames, all of this can be adjusted in any way you choose. All of these can be moved, they can be rotated, they can be scaled. Anything that you want to do digital scrapbooking wise, you are able to do like that. So there we have our Halloween layout full of Lady Lola, looking her absolute best, if I do say so myself. Obviously, I'm what's the word? Bias. Of course I am. Right, now, that was making your own picture frames. I like to do that, but sometimes you want something a little bit more designed than just a standard frame on it. So I will save that. We'll have that as, hang on, all kinds of stuff has gone on here. We'll call it Lola. Right, so will I leave that there? No, I'll make another one. Right, so I'll go in there. We'll just do exactly the same again, and we're starting from scratch. The background this time doesn't matter. What we're working with now is principle of assets. And these are, again, we're sticking with photo frames. But what I have here is, I will show you, I downloaded what was called a vintage photo frame. So we're looking at this one. I have already done the demo, so that's why I have an AF file there. But in here, this is what we had. We had a JPEG of this. And there was a Photoshop file. So instantly I thought, well, you use the Photoshop file, don't you? Because a JPEG is a single layer and a Photoshop file is editable. So let's open up the Photoshop file. So I'm going to double click that. And there it is. Now I looked at the background and I thought, oh, it's transparent. Because that's what that hash pattern usually indicates, it's transparent. Then I looked at what I had. So remember back about 45 minutes ago when I said it would be a good idea to check your file to see what you've got. This is a prime example of that. Right, that background, why would there be a background if it's transparent? That's interesting. So the first thing I did was look at it and turned it off. And I got a smaller hash pattern, which told me that the background is indeed transparent, but this isn't transparent. What's that there for? Right, that is not transparent. It's a background with a hash pattern on it. Okay, not to worry. Obviously, what we would be aiming to do with this is to put a photo in the frame. So I thought, well, I need that. And then I looked at what I had. It's an object. Okay, so it's no better than a JPEG then. Well, next to it, there's a little symbol, and that indicates it's an embedded document. Normally, when you have an embedded document, another word for that is a smart document, or a smart object is what it's called in Photoshop. So I thought, well, double click the thumbnail, and that will drill you down into what we hope is an editable file. So double click it. Look what has happened at the top. We have our untitled, we have the file we've just opened, Photoshop, and now we have the file that is embedded in the file in the middle. Right, excellent. I looked across at it, and it's no better than a JPEG. So why it's a Photoshop file is anybody's guess, because it's not editable. I can't just click here and put a photo behind that because it's pixels on a single layer. It's absolutely a complete and utter waste of time that is an embedded file. There is no need for it to be an embedded file because it's just one object. What you could do, and this would cut down on your file size, is copy that object in the embedded file and then close the embedded file. And then back at this level, paste it. So I have a copy of that. I can even place it absolutely in the right place. This file, you might as well delete, not needed. And we don't need that background either. That's doing no good to man nor beast, is that. So what we've got, we've examined the file and it's pretty similar to the JPEG, is the upshot of it. Right, so that's what we've done. The other things I would do when I'm looking at a file is, do we have a document palette? No, we will not, because it was a Photoshop file, so it's highly unlikely. Do we have any saved selections? Probably not. Not in here, no, because I've copied this. So no, this is not a smart enabled image or asset at all. We're about to make it so. So what we would need to do with this is get an image in there. Now, obviously, it's rotated slightly. There is an inner shadow on it, which is lovely, but it's flat. So if we put an image in it or over the top of it, we're going to lose all of that. All right, one option you've got is to use your photo frame, so your picture frame tool, and draw it out and then rotate it. And with this one, that might work. So what I'd be looking to do with that is place it so it's just about on the edge of that one. But notice we have a problem. It's a little bit big, but if I get it right, it's not right, if you're with me. Because that corner there is not matching up. Even if the rotation was perfect, it would not line up properly. So we've got a bit of a problem with that then. Right, we would need to do magic with it. Can we do magic with it? Yes, you can. So we could at this stage start completely from scratch and draw a frame. Or we could try and use the one we've got. So first of all, let's get something in it. So I've got assets here. I do have stock showing. Right, let's go get a Samoyed, a brethren for Lola to play with. Right, there we go. And we'll have a cute little faced one. They're all cute, aren't they? Oh, he's particularly cute. Right, let's drag and drop him in there. Now we can see the edge of what's going on here, and you can see that you're seeing far too much in the background there. But what we can do, so on the frame here, if I go and I'm swapping my tool here, which isn't actually doing me much good at the moment, because it's a picture frame, but that is possibly as good as you're going to get without a lot of fiddling with it. So another way to do it is to work with what you have here, and you have a pen tool. Now, I know some people run away screaming when they think about the pen tool. This is not going to be tricky. Right, all we need to do is to click once and then move across to where we need the second point and click once and rinse and repeat. Click in each corner and move across to there and then go back to the top. Now you think at that point, oh, it's got a fill. It has, but it's not actually sealed. It's not a shape. Right, that looks about right. But that is a shape. That is not a smart picture frame, but it could be. So I've drawn a shape with the pen tool. I'm going to right click on it and say convert to picture frame. Now look at the X. It's not going to the corners because the picture frame is straight. It's going to be constrained to the outer edges of it, so it will display correctly. So we don't have to worry about the fact that the X isn't quite right. We'll still drag and drop this one in and getting there. Now I say getting there because we look at this, we do have a black edge on it, and that's because our line here has a line on it. We could take that away. So that's the first thing we could do. And then what I do is check that that is lined up and I'm not seeing anything behind it that I don't want to see. Now we could say here that we're seeing a little bit, but I don't think that's that important. So that is perfect. And converting it to a picture frame means we get our move handle, the rotation option and the zoom option. But it still doesn't look quite the same as the original. So let's just toggle off the dog and see that part of the beauty of that was this drop shadow. Now, there are ways that you could apply drop shadow to it where you just spew up pixels on a page. Don't do that. Right. It's far easier within our frame here to apply an effect to it, which you've already seen me do, which is we keep putting a drop shadow on it, don't we? So if I put a drop shadow on it and then you need to apply a radius so you can see it, But the problem is that's actually the opposite of what we want. It's lifting it off the page. That isn't the effect we want. So it's not an outer shadow. It's actually an inner shadow. So we'll give it an inner shadow and we will apply that to it. And I'm obviously going crazy here so you can actually see it. You can see it appearing at the bottom edge here. You can decide where that displays. So I'm moving this so I can show you that you can change the angle. So you could have that up here, you can move it around. It's like a clock face. You can move that around to where that actually looks best. Now this is a demonstration, it doesn't matter. And on this image, I think it shows up better at the bottom than it does the top. You can also in here have an offset on that. So that would impact it as well, as would the intensity. So if you want that to be much more intense and you want it to move, you can do all of that. But the thing is, why do you bother doing that rather than spewing up the black pixels? Because this is scalable. It will move with it and it's scalable. Again, you've got your scale with object. Do you want it to scale with the object or not? But when I say scalable, I mean if you were to move that, it would go with it. It's part of the picture frame. That's why these shapes are so smart. So we've got something now where we have the photo we want and we have the depth that we want. Now that image was very, very basic. That was, in effect, just like a JPEG. There was not much else with it. But at the moment, you can see at the top, it's still a Photoshop file. So what would happen if I saved it? And it comes up and it prompts me to save it, but just a minute, it's already got a name and it's a Photoshop file. Affinity by default will not overwrite a Photoshop file, which is probably a good thing. If you want to save this out to Photoshop, I would do that separately rather than try doing it by overwriting what's already there, because you are going to overwrite the original. And we made a lot of changes to the original. So I'm just going to save that in the root there with the name that it's suggesting. But now this is an Affinity file. It is not a Photoshop file. Another reason for saving it that way is that I've got Affinity features in here that may or may not be supported by a file type that you export to. So sometimes when you open a Photoshop file, it will say error. This is an unsupported feature, so usually some kind of weird gradient. But you would also find that in Affinity, you would have features that are not supported in other file types. So I've now saved it as an Affinity file. Right, that was a flat image. What I'm going to move on to next is something that looks similar-ish, but it is slightly different, which is another Photoshop file. Now, this is what I mean by error messages. Effect Gradient Fill GS99. I have no idea what that is, but it's not supported in Affinity. It doesn't stop the file opening. It's just that there'll be something missing, and if you don't have Photoshop, you're not going to have a clue what. But again, what I would do with this is investigate the file. What am I looking at? Is this something that is on a single layer? Because this photo frame in the middle here has some distress on it that you might want on the photo. So does it have layers? Well, it certainly has a background. We open that up, it's saying that that is a background. In fact, it's a special kind of layer, which is what this symbol indicates. It's a fill layer. And what a fill layer is, means you can just apply a fill to it and it will do all the work. You literally just click on a colour and it will apply it. Not what we want right now, but we'll leave it there. That is in the background. And then we have the objects and it says composition. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So the background here is separate and the frame is separate. This is the kind of stock that you want to work with because it makes everything else easier. In terms of, we have the backing board and we have this that says picture. And if we open that up, you can see it says change the colour here. I'm not thinking that, I think that is what is not supported in Affinity, but it doesn't matter anyway, because we've got the backing board and we've got the picture. We can make magic with this as well. Now, I don't know how square that is, but it isn't going to matter for what I'm going to do. I could do it the same way that I've done it, or I could drag this on and see how square it is and draw one out. That's not bad. That is pretty square. So what I've done is created a picture frame on the top of everything else. At which point, we'll put a Samoyed in it again, because it's cute. Right, now we can see we do have a little bit of an issue at the bottom there, but nothing catastrophic. We can make that stretch out like that. But obviously at this point, it wasn't quite the same as the other one, where it had that effect on it. Now, if we open that up, you can see we got this change colour, but it wasn't really changing the colour. But there is an effect option over here, and it is telling you it's got layer effects. Okay, what? Oh, they've added a drop shadow to it. So this came from Photoshop, remember. But again, that's not really useful to me either, because what I want is that kind of aged, distressed look putting over the top of my image. And luckily in here, what they're calling the photo frame in there, what they're calling the picture, is actually separate from the backing board. So if the dog was sandwiched between the two, we're getting somewhere. Now I know what you're thinking, can't see the dog. But all we would need to do is change the blend mode. So I'm zooming in so you can see the distress on this. And then changing the blend mode. So darken, not great. Multiply, not great, too dark. Nothing to stop you doing that though. And changing the opacity of it. But you tend to lose the distressed artifacts that is what you're trying to keep. Obviously, no, too dark, lighten. So what I would do is adopt Mike's trick, which is just go down here and find one that looks reasonable. Now, we've got there, that one doesn't show it too well. Hard light shows it quite well. And then what we might want to do with that is lighten that up. So you are using a blend mode and the opacity to bring the image back, but you retain the distressed artifacts on it, which is exactly what you want. And then, of course, you would take that and you would place it on your layout. So you could take the whole thing. You may not need a background, in which case, just turn it off and select the rest. So everything else is under objects, and you would just copy that and place it into your layout. Obviously, whatever is in here, you may want to check. You could recolor the paper, you could add text to the paper, you can take scrapbooking as far as you really want to go. But it's the core of knowing the core features of Affinity that will help you do it in the best way, the most editable way, and the fastest way. So that could be taken and put anywhere. Again, it's a Photoshop file, so when I come to save it, it wants to save as something else. And I will just save it. And we have a distressed image rather than a distressed dog. Right, that was one option. Now, there are things that you can do in Affinity in terms of starting from scratch and making assets. Now, it could be that you are, in your scrapbooking, both scrapbooking personally and maybe making asset sets or templates for sale. If you want those to be compatible with as many apps as possible, you can do that from Affinity. But it's still faster to make the things in Affinity. You may be able to do things in Affinity you can't do in other applications. And if you're making these kits, your scrapbooking kits, for people with Affinity, then don't take it as far as you would need to with other applications. Leave things in an editable state and your customers will thank you. Right, so let's lose that one. I think I saved that one as well, didn't I? Right, and I'm going to get a new file, but this time I'm going for a little bit smaller. Which one is this? Okay, it's that one. Right, so let's go and get below the canvas these web ones that are a web size. So I'll go for 1080. Right, and I'm going to start completely from scratch with this. So what I'm going to do is add a picture frame. And let's say that's about right. And add something to it. So I think we've seen him, haven't we? Oh, this is one of my very favourites. Reminds me of my boy. Right. So all I've done is add a picture frame and add an image to it. Right. I'm going to use this as an image, but I need a nice frame on it. Better than just a pixel frame. So what I'm going to do with it is make a shape. And I want the shape to be the same size as the image that I've got. But obviously I need to see the image, so I'm going to put the frame behind it. Now obviously I can't see it. But in my vector tools, I have a tool that I don't demonstrate that often, which is the contour tool. And what this will enable you to do, because what we need is the background bigger than the photo. You can do that by doing this, and then doing that, and then thinking that's not in the right place, and then doing this to try and line it up. Is that in the right place? Actually, it is. But rather than do all of that, it's behind it. You have the contour tool. The contour tool will enable you to stretch that out evenly without you having to go in and fiddle with it. So this is what I mean when I say the Affinity tools and toolset can give you tools that will enable you to work much faster. Right, how big do I need it? That's not bad. Now notice at this stage, I have a contour around my original shape. What that looks like is that I've got two blue borders. The outer one is the outer of the contour, and the inner one is the outline of the shape. But I need this to have square corners. Well, luckily we have some options in the contour tool. The default is round joints, but you also have mitre joints and bevel joints. So that's what it would look like bevel edged. You may want that for a photo frame. That's absolutely perfect. But what I want here is for that to be square. Now, I need at that stage for the contour and the original shape to be merged together. And that is what the bake appearance option does. So I'm going to click that. Now, when I turn my picture back on, you can see that it's bang in the middle of the shape that I have behind it. Right, next thing to do. I want this to be a bit of a snazzy frame, a bit designed, but I want to do it the easy way. Right, we can put a border on it. At the moment, that border's black. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. This I actually do want to be a slightly different colour for the shape. So hang on a moment. For the shape, I would like it to be that, but a little bit lighter. So I'll double click it and make it a little bit lighter. In fact, a lot lighter. About there. Right. Now, it needs a border on it. Does it have a border on it, a stroke on it? Not at the moment. If I add that and we make that much bigger, you can see the stroke. And I'm going to zoom in just to show you some options in here. Right, you can change the cap. You can change that to round, butt, or square. You can change the joints. You can change the alignment. Now, the alignment is the one I'm interested in at the moment, which is at the moment, it's aligned to the centre, which is why this huge stroke has that blue border running around the middle of it. What I want to do with that is change it, move it to the middle. But I'm going to do something else first so you can see what a huge difference it makes. This, at the moment, doesn't look anything like I want it to look, because this is a solid line style. What I actually want here is to do this, which is a dashed line style. Now, this is where you will see a huge difference between the caps and the joins and the alignment. So if I change that, you can see it changes to squares. And if I change that, it gives you a totally different appearance. Now, actually, I do want it rounded, but I don't particularly want it to look like that. Now, I always have an option enabled in here, which is this option at the bottom. That is the default for how this used to behave. And Affinity got carpeted for it for years. Because if you're trying to use this to create maybe like a coupon effect, where you want to put scissors at the top, the corners aren't right. They don't match. They never did. There was a lot of dirty hack style workarounds for it, but this option that we have here now, which is balanced dash pattern, solves the problem. Now all the corners look the same. So that's what this option at the bottom's for. We've seen what the cap does. Join wise, this is making a slight difference at the corner, but not much. But we want a rounded cap, we want a round join. Alignment wise, I've said that's the middle. That is on the inside and that is on the outside. What we want is actually on the inside. There's only one more thing we need to do, and that is these at the bottom here enable you. There's 6 little text boxes with underneath we've got 2 different shades of grey. Right, what I'm going to show you is this first one. If I put 0 in there, it totally changes how that looks. It's subtle though. So in the next one, if I put 3, you can see, whoa, what happened there? Well, 3, this second one, if I put 5 in there, it's the gap between the dots. Now that's a little bit too much. But you might say, well, I don't know what to type in there. You don't actually need to know what to type in there. These stripes underneath, they're alive. They are active. You can click and drag and it will change the number in the box like that. So somewhere between 2.5 and 3 is a decent look for what I want. So you can either type it or you can drag the bottom. If I show you this one here, with that active, I can do the same there. And you get a totally different look. But for what we want, I'm hoping at this stage you can see what that is, or what it's going to be in a moment. Right, it's supposed to look like a postage stamp. So let's put the dog back in. Absolutely perfect. Apart from the fact that the cutouts are black. And we don't really want them black. In fact, we don't really want them any kind of colour, do we? We want them removing from the shape. But at the moment, they're burnt in. It's a shape. And you've just told it to make the edges look like that. Now, this potentially is a good place to make a copy of this. Because if you want to make any changes, what we're about to do is burn it in. So you could make a copy at that stage. I'll do that just so we've got one. And I'll toggle it off and I'll lock it. Right, so that's a backup. We'll actually put backup. Right, because what we're about to do is destructive. Now, what I am about to do is go to Vector and down to Expand Stroke. And what that will do is it will take whatever stroke is on the shape and promote it to its own layer. So now we've got this polyline and we've got curves, but they're separate. So if I turn off the background, that is the outline. That is the stroke, but it now lives on its own layer. If I turn that off and turn that back on, you can see in effect we've taken, although we designed the stroke on it, we've promoted it to its own layer. That's important. So let's bring it back on. These are 2 totally separate shapes. And if you've been with me before, you may be ahead of me in terms of what I'm going to do. But I need the stroke taking away from the shape. I'm in the Vector Studio, and therefore I have my Boolean operations available, one of which is subtract. If I do that, I am now left with my shape with my cutouts around the edge. This is only one way to do this, but it's a cool use of some of the Affinity tools. So now we have our stamp. We can turn the subject matter of the stamp back on. And on the actual layer itself, I would suggest you could add an outer shadow to that, and it would give you depth and lift it off the page. Remembering to put scale with object in there. Now, something to show you. I said that when you'd drawn a shape and all the rest of that, it remembered that if you were going to draw another one. So let's go and just draw a shape. And indeed, it did remember it, didn't it? Fantastic. What that means at this stage is we made a backup, but it doesn't matter whether we did or not. Because if you think, oh, that was perfect, and now it's not editable, just draw another one. So if I draw that and I make sure that that is a similar size or exactly the same size as that, what should I do with it next? Because I might want to make a range of stamps for different things. Now, you could save that. You could make an asset of that. But what's an even better way? And that would be a style, not a text style, an object style. So you have object styles. These are the default ones. I do have a demo set for putting stuff like this into, and you will see that the other 4 here, the first ones are gold stuff I was working on, but the other 4 are all to do with this. So with this, all I need to do is add it into here. So you can import them, you can export them, but you can also add from a selection, which gives you style 8. You can then, in there, rename that. We'll call it stamp. What's the benefit of that? Well, your shape tool will only remember that in this file. It won't remember it beyond that. And if I drew another shape, so let's say I went over here and I did this, but I took away all of this. So I applied different things to it. I took the stroke away, and then I've actually managed to do that already. But then I went over here and I drew another shape, and now it's taking on this. So I've lost those settings, but I don't need to worry about it because I made an object style of it. And whether that object is round, or in fact we can get rid of that, whether it's round, square or rectangular, move these so we've got some space. Right, let's make that much bigger. We can apply this to it. Now we do still have work to do at that point. Remember, we would need to expand, vector expand stroke. That has put it on a layer of its own. We would need to select the 2, subtract, and now we've got a nice cogwheel. And exactly the same with that. So once more for good measure. So expand stroke, select the 2, subtract, and there you go. So by making a style of it, don't make the style when you've finished, make the style just before you make the thing uneditable. And that means you've got an editable version. Your other option is to make this back up here. Right, so that was one of those. Let's go in and have a look at the other. I'm just going to do some very quick frames similar to this, but perfunctory. Let's say perfunctory. Right, one thing that a lot of people ask me to do, how do I make a Polaroid? It couldn't be easier. You draw out a shape for the Polaroid. You can then duplicate that or draw out another one. Make it a different colour and smaller, only so you can see it. So in here, I'll give it a colour, make it a bit smaller, and then position it like a Polaroid and give us a little bit of room to write what we want on the bottom. That's the easiest, the quickest way to do it. Is that the right way to do it? Well, it'd be a good idea to group them. And now you've got a Polaroid. Or have you? Not really. It was 2 shapes, wasn't it? Oh, what were you thinking? That shouldn't be a shape. It should be a picture frame. So we will right click on it and turn it into a picture frame. And that gives us this cross in it. Now it could be on your setup, you say to me, I did that, I don't see a cross. No, now it's gone away, hasn't it? Because I've gone into preview mode, and in preview mode, you do not see the cross. You don't see that. Go back into preview mode or go back out of preview mode, which is Control and W on Windows and Mac. Right, and now you've got your Polaroid. Obviously, the back of that at the minute is grey. You would probably want it either white or almost white, in which case you may want to put a stroke on it, solid, quite tiny, just so you can see it. And then you are, of course, going to put an image in it. So we'll go back and get some stock. Let's have that one in there. Very cute. And of course, we can move this around. But again, it's what I would say is a vector Polaroid. It's not very organic. You can do a certain amount with it, though. You can, with the picture frame, change your effects to add that inner shadow. So not an outer one, an inner one that makes it look a little bit more realistic. If you look at the edges of that, it actually is starting to look that way. But it's still vector. It's still not much in the way of organic. Because of that, there is an alternative to this. So let me show you the alternative, which is a photorealistic one. So this is something that I downloaded. It is completely free. I will drag and drop that next to it. You can see how big it is. And I'm working on quite a small canvas here. So let's change the size of it and show you the difference between a vector Polaroid and a real Polaroid. Much more organic, much more realistic. So let's make them a reasonable size. Right, you can see this has already got drop shadow on the back. But again, make sure you have a look at this. Right, is it transparent? It is. One thing that people say to me is, oh, I'd just put an image behind it. Yeah, good luck with that. Because if you do, let's take this one and we just drag and drop it on. It's going to be huge, but we'll make it smaller and we'll put it in place. It could be that you want it so you can see all the dogs like that. And now you've got a gap top and bottom. Even if you put that behind here, you've still got a lot of work. Now you've got a bit hanging out on top of everything else. You've got 2 white bits and a bit hanging out. So don't do that, even though it's transparent. Leave it alone. Right, let's get rid of that and fix the problem here, which is very similar to what we've already done before. You should know that. Right, how do we get this one perfect? Well, we could start drawing round this like we did with the other one, but this one's got transparency. We might as well make that work to our advantage, which would be, in my layout, I have my picture frame tool, and I'm going to draw a picture frame like that. Obviously, didn't have to be very careful with that at all. It's probably best to be as close to the frame as possible, because you don't want to lose too much. And put that behind the Polaroid. I would then, with that, group them. And then you want to drag and drop your image into the picture frame, like that. And now you've not got any white bits, top and bottom, nor have you got any bits hanging out the back, but you did that the really quick way. Because it had transparency, you didn't have to be careful or use the pen tool either. And you have an organic looking Polaroid. You can, of course, with your frame or your photo, let's see which would be best. Let's put it on here. You can apply your inner shadow and get even more of an impact on there. So I'll put a little bit of that and an intensity. And now it's starting to look very real. So that is a vector one, and it is your more organic one, more realistic. I would say that's photorealistic. Right, we will save that as Polaroids. Polaroids. Right. And what else have we got? Oh, that was stamps, wasn't it? And I didn't save it. So let's save that as stamps. And I'm not quite sure what that's there for. Right, similar thing. You have got, so I'm just having a look at the time, looking at this. Yes, we can probably do that. I'll do another photorealistic one, which I will, what have I got here? I've got that one. Right, I will do it from this one. This is just a stock image. This is not smart enabled in any kind of way. It's not assets or for scrapbooking. It's literally just something that I found on a stock site. And if I rotate it that way, is that the right way up? I didn't have it the right way up the other day. Yes, that's the right way up there. Right, what I can do, and I tend to do, is to put in an artboard around the selection. And that makes it easier for me to work with it. Now, I'm only interested, because I've got this bit cut off and that bit cut off, I'm only interested in smart enabling this so I can put my pictures in it and make a negative strip. So I'm going to use the vector crop tool to crop that inwards so we lose the negative on the left and we lose the negative on the right. And then it's pretty similar to what we did with the other one. In terms of, all we need to do is have some shapes on here. Now, you'd think they were rectangles. They're sort of rectangles. Not quite rectangular rectangles. They're at an angle. So if I draw that on, you can see, even though it's right in the top left and bottom right, it's not right here. Right, what we can do with that is, at the moment, this is smart enabled. Now, what smart enabled means is you can make changes to it. So it is an affinity shape, not a standard shape. If you want to make adjustments to that, change it to curves first. Convert it to curves. How you would know the difference is it will say polyline, not shape. It will give you a different icon, and the corner points are not round, they are square. So now you can move the individual corner points and make sure that this is lining up absolutely perfectly without using the pen tool. So let's pop that into position, and this one should be fairly accurate. Right, so that's got that there. Now we could at that point make an assumption that the others would be the same, and with a bit of luck they will be, and that'll make things a little bit quicker. So let's copy that and move it up. It might need placing slightly because it is askew. So if I move it there like that, that looks about right. I would put one of these up here, so let's move that there. I'm using the arrow keys to move it down, so it covers up the negative behind it. But obviously I've got this bit hanging off the edge. And what I can do with that is bring it back to here, but that gives me another problem. Now it's not right there and it's not right there, but remember, it's editable. Double click it. That means you've got the square corners, and move this to where it needs to be, but also on the edge. So it will snap to the edge when it goes red, and then move it into place. So that's got the top one. And we need this one, duplicating down there again, putting into position, and we need one more at the bottom. So let's go and do that. And where are we with positioning them? That's about right. It's a demo. I'm not concerned with it being pixel perfect. We need to extract principal from demos. Right, that one looks okay. This one, of course, is going to look all right at the top, but it's going to run out if I crop it here. So once I crop it there, you can see it starts to run out, but double click, zoom in, pull it into position, same over here, and that will sort it all out like that. Now, what do I need to do to make that work? If you're using standard applications that do not support anything clever, anything smart, and I'm thinking I've got some gaps going on here, haven't I? But it's a demo. Don't sweat it, girl. Right. You could say, well, I've got the shapes. I'll use the shapes. I'll pop the pictures in and I'll put them in the shapes. You could do that, but we're going to go beyond that. Right. What I would say is make them picture frames. It's my answer to everything. Make it a picture frame because it saves you time. But if we do that at this point, future us will not thank us. No. What we need to do at this point, I'm going to select them all there, and I'm going to copy them and paste them or duplicate them. So I now have a set of duplicates. Right, these are the top ones. These ones are the back ones. So with the back ones, I'm just going to leave them there. But with the ones that are on top, they need to be picture frames. So right click, convert to picture frame. And now I can drag and drop stuff in there. So let's go and do that. Right, I don't want to drag and drop the same dog into all of them, nor do I want to open said dog. Right, oh, he looks cute in a bow tie. Right, let's pop him in there. Right, I'm going to think about it. There we go, there's the first one in. And all I then need to do is go and do the others. So let's put that one in there. We got one where the dog's lying down, where the dog is towards the bottom of the frame, or could be towards the bottom of the frame, like that one, and that would work better for up there. So let's get that image in. There we go. Oh, that actually works. Right, so we just need two more images. So he's had quite an outing today, hasn't he? Let's put him in. And, oh, let's go get that top one again, the running one. Right, let's put him there. Right, we now have a photorealistic negative strip with smart enabled picture frames and our photos in it. But that's great if you want to showcase it like that. It's not negatives though, is it? They're not negatives. Now, we could make them negatives. Let me show you what the problem would have been if we hadn't have thought about it in hand, which is, let's forget there, and let's go and get this dog here towards the bottom. Right. You can, I'm going to duplicate that. Why are you popping over there? What are you doing? Right, hang on. Did I take him out? Ah, I put a different thing on it, didn't I? Okay, we'll do it on this one and we'll see the problem first. Right, you can change the blend mode. And one of the blend modes we have, guess what? Negation. Now it looks like a negative, but it's looking a bit strange. Why is it looking strange? And that is because behind it, so let's move it. Hang on, why have I got multiple dogs here? Just a minute. I want there to put a negation on that. Right, that's the problem that we've got, which is the negative from the strip underneath is showing through, because a blend mode operates on two layers. It operates on the base layer and the blend layer. So the base layer is the negative and the blend layer is the dog, and the two are now interacting. Yeah, we didn't want that. We didn't need that, did we? But that won't happen, will it? Because I made copies of the shapes. If I just turn those on, that'll solve the problem. It will cover the negative up in the background. Right, then all we need to do is make all of them negations. So let's grab the ones that weren't, which are those, and apply the blend mode negation there. Right. But we can go a step further than that because we've been clever, haven't we? Which is these shapes that are behind our photos, they're just shapes. So if we don't like the effect, we can change the effect. Either all of them together or individually. So this one doesn't look bad, but this one just looks scary. It looks like it belongs on the Halloween one. Right, so what we need to do is work out here which one is behind that. So that one is behind this one, and that one is behind the fourth one. So these two, and I would say they're both too dark. Right, well, they're grey at the moment. So if we go into our swatches and we open this up, we can change how the negation looks by changing the background. So if we make it darker, it becomes lighter. But you can also totally change it in here. So if I make it a kind of green, now it much matches the others. And we were able to do that because we have these shapes behind the picture frames to make magic with. So let's take the middle one. And that is that one, isn't it? No, it's not. It's that one. So what I would actually do with these, I would say it would be better if you take that and you put it where it needs to be. So take that one and put it behind there. And then take this one, which is the top one, and put it behind there. And then you know which is which. It just makes it a little bit easier. But that is the one we've got. And as we move around here, you can see you get a totally different effect. So if we wanted this very purple to match a scrapbooking theme page, we can do that. So that is making magic with picture frames and shapes and stock images. That came from a stock image. So we'll have that there. You'll notice it says contains non-pixel elements. What's going on now? This, when it was opened, if you look at the name, was a JPEG. And it will save it as a JPEG with all of my changes. Oh, then I would lose the ability to edit it. So always do a save as. It will automatically save as an Affinity file, and now you'll be able to go back in and edit that. Right, we are almost at the end. Right, I had something that somebody asked about before. This was asked about in a different session, and I'm going to demonstrate it in terms of what you can do with shapes and the magic you can make with shapes. So to do this one, I'll do this A4 because it's an effect that you see in a lot of corporate reports. Now, before you freak out and think I'm not making a corporate report, I know, but this is where I've seen it a lot. So I have an A4 page, and the question was asked, how do you make a hexagonal grid? Well, hexagons are really popular in scrapbooking and in corporate reports. So how do you do that? Well, I've got this A4 page, and I'm going up to View and Grid and Axis. We have been in here before in other demonstrations. We even made a preset of 5mm, but that's not what we're doing today. What we also have in here, that top one is custom, and that's why the icon is a person. It's personal to you. But these come with Affinity, and one of them is a 1 centimetre triangular. So let's enable that. Well, that looks frightening, doesn't it? We're not going to make any changes whatsoever, but if you look at your document, yeah, not much change there. You actually need to manually turn the grid on. I've no idea why you'd need to do that when you've selected it, but here we go. So turn the grid on, and now you've got this lovely pattern there. So I didn't make any changes. You can make as many changes as you like, but I am not making any. We're keeping it simple. So I'm going to zoom into this. Remember what we're trying to do. Hexagons, a hexagonal grid. Right, pen tool. Click on one of the joints, and you can see it lights up in all kinds of colours. We've got red, we've got, I think we've got blue in there as well as green. But click, move, click, move, click, and we're going to draw out a hexagon. Just like that. Isn't that simple? Right. Now, obviously, it's quite tiny. You can, of course, if what you want is a grid of tiny hexagons, I want them a little bit bigger than that, but you can hold the Option key down and drag it into position, and you get all these lines so it's in the right position. Now, I'm seeing those because I have snapping turned on up here, and I snap to virtually everything because that makes sense to me. If snapping isn't turned on, I think it's broken. Right, so we've got that there, and I'm going to pull that one out, and then I can Command and J or Control and J and make a whole row of them. Now, that isn't actually what I want to do with this, but that is how you would make a hexagonal grid. Right, let's get rid of everything apart from this one. And let's assume that what I want to do is make this bigger, that I could put a picture in it. Now, I'm still going to use this to line it up, but notice what I'm doing. I'm scaling it so it fits here. So let me have a look there. It's slightly out at that point. That looks like it fits, although I think it's still slightly out. That looks better. So let's have a look at that. That looks decent. Right. So in corporate reports and for shapes for scrapbooking, you would probably want to have some of these side by side, but you would probably also want to go down like this and maybe start to kind of veer off like that. So make a pattern of them like that. So you could definitely do that. Right, let me just add a couple more here. Let's pop one there. The actual layout doesn't matter, purely a demo, just showing you how this works. Now, at that point, I've got my grey shapes and they've got a border on them, a stroke on them. So let's have a look what the stroke looks like. An ugly black at the moment, but never mind. Right, now where is this? And if we look at our alignment, it's on the edge. I think we could probably afford to leave it there with what I'm going to do. Let's fingers crossed on that one and assume that we can. Right, what I would tend to do with this and what this would tend to look like in a report or a scrapbook is that you would have a background. So let's put a background on it. Right, notice it's retained what I already did on those hexagons, which I don't particularly want. Don't want that, and we want it some kind of nice colour. So let's put that behind it and lock it. That's all I want. And then I've got my shapes. Now, my shapes have a line on them. It's the black line. I possibly, with my stroke, even want it bigger than that, but not crazy big. So let's say 5. Something I've already done, which you've seen me do with the other option, was expand the strokes. So we could do that again, which is a vector expand stroke, and do that. Now what we've ended up with is we've separated the shape from its stroke, and that's what's highlighted. So Command and G to group them, and obviously you can now see, good grief, what's happened. They're at the back. They are at the back, but we can bring them to the front. So with these, if we now toggle those off, you can see we've got a hexagon framework over the top of our shapes, which we are about to make magic with. Right, there's 2 ways that you can go with this. So I'm going to duplicate them, and I'm going to group that one, and we'll come back to that in a moment. So let's toggle it off. These are what I've got at the moment, and I am going to right click on those and convert them to picture frames. And now I've ended up with 6 individual picture frames. Let's use a cat this time. Lola likes cats. Right, let's pop a cat in some of these. So I'm going to drag and drop in some images like that. And we've made, that one probably needs to move a bit, doesn't it? Oh, it's got face on it, that. Right, like that. So you've made the ability to make a cat montage or any other kind of montage you like in here. But you've retained the ability with this group on the outside of framing it as well. Now, you could have done it separately, but, you know, why do that when you can do it in this way and make changes to that? Now, the other way to do it, which is why having this expanded stroke is really important, is with this group here, because you might not want 6 separate frames. So these are our separate frames. We will turn them off. These are, let's turn them on so we can see them. These were the shapes. They were just shapes. Right. I am going to make them one shape, which is using a Boolean operation of add. And now we have a single shape and we have our frame at the top. Now, the reason that I separated the frame, the stroke, from the shape was because if I had left the stroke on there and I'd made one shape, we'd only have the outer frame. And I wanted all of the inner frames as well. But we now have one shape, which we can right click on and convert to a picture frame and put one cat in there. So have we got a vertical cat? I did have a vertical cat before. I think that one might work well. So let's drag and drop the cat in and move the cat so we can see his face in our shapes, like that. That also means in our group here, we should be able, with our curves, to change the colour of that. So if we wanted that to kind of complement it, maybe a blue or maybe a darker blue or maybe white, which would look really well with it, we can do that. And if I then use Control and W, you get a preview of what that will actually look like that. Right, and then what I would be doing then is adding content to the pages. So shall we open one of those layouts that we did? Right, which was which? Let me go and get either the Chinese. I think we'll have the Chinese one if I saved it. I'm sure I did. Right, let me go and find him. That was the one we did. There we go. Chinese layout. So I will open that. Now, I said, what have I got first? No, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave him there. I'll save the cat. So, cat. I will get... Did I save you? I'm not sure if I did or not. I think I did. Let's try closing it. Yes, I did. Right. So, what I'm going to show you with this one is we'll do A3, so it's a big layout like that, and just show you what you can do with some free stock. Now, I haven't put this in the assets panel, but it is free stock, and I've put it in my digital asset manager of choice, which is Eagle. And this is what it looks like, and it is perfect for scrapbooking. So this Polaroid I've already used as a demo. What I'm going to do is drag some of these on and just show you that you can just lay out these. They don't need any editing. All you would need to do is to scale them. So all I do from Eagle, and Eagle just gives me a nice way to organize it. It's about $40. It's a one-off cost, and it's fantastic. So all I'm going to do is drag and drop some of these things on. And then, of course, in addition to your photos in the middle, you can have any kind of layout that you want. So let me drag these on. There is even a cap for that pen, believe it or not. The only thing I'd be careful of here is the scaling that you use. Where's the lid off the pen? There we go. So I scaled this down. You don't want that next to it. Absolutely huge. What I do with that is rotate it round and say, is that the right size to fit it? And it's not far off, is it? So maybe it's just a fraction big, like that. And then rotate it in any kind of way you want. So I didn't make these. These are PNGs of stock that you can then use to supplement the layout that you initially created. Now, if these are the kind of stock images that you use multiple times, then that's where the Assets panel comes into play, which we've already seen, which is here. They were my spider's webs and my bats and my cute ghosts. Right, so let's have a look what we can do with that. So, did I save you there? I'm sure I did. Let's have a look. There it is. Right. Should have called it Halloween after all, because then I couldn't find it because it's called Lola. Crying out loud. Right. So what you saw me do with this, if we turn off here, all of those, right, what you saw me do was in the assets, just go in here, grab something, drag and drop it. And that's what it enabled us to do. So I think we've turned off that now, haven't we? Let's get that outside of it. Right. And you can do whatever you want with these. These are all editable. You can do all the usual things with them. The difference is that they came from the Assets panel. So how does the Assets panel work? Well, first thing you can do is create a new category. This is the top level. It is a collection of assets on its own. When you do that, it allows you to give it a name. So we'll call this Demo Halloween, like that. That gives you one subcategory called Assets. Now, what I'm going to do is rename that. We'll import the ghosts in here. So these were cute ghosts. Right. So that's what needs to go in there. Now, you've got a couple of options with this. So I've got some images here. So I've got this, which it insists on putting inside there, which is wrong. Right. If it's something like this that you've got and it's a one-off, then that's really simple. All you need to do with that is make sure it's selected and go to the burger menu and add from selection. And it adds whatever is on your canvas to the Assets panel. Right. Now, those ghosts, the cute ghosts, there were 21 of them. Who wants to do that 21 times? I don't. You know, you would need to drag this onto the canvas and then select it and then go to Assets and then say Add from Selection. Don't do that. Life's too short. From your Finder or your Explorer, these are PNGs, it doesn't matter, and drag and drop. Now, it will take a couple of seconds while it reads them in. It's going to depend how many there are, and it's going to depend on the size of them. Don't make me out to be a liar by not doing it. Oh, what have you done? It's actually opened the whole lot, which is not what it should do. Not what it should do at all. Let me close all of that lot down. I did drag and drop them into the right place. It's just being awkward. Right, let's try that again. Don't ruin my demo. Doesn't make me happy. Right, let's do it again. I think this time we have got the blue line and the spinning beach ball of death to indicate it's reading those files. And that is much faster. Also within there, I have, so I've got my cute ghosts. Here we go. They were PNGs, cute ghost in there. But I also have some bats which were SVG format. And it's okay with that as well. But what I would do before I try and import them is go and create a subcategory for them. So create subcategory and then change the name of that to bats. Go in here and grab my SVG bats. Oh, did you just crash? You swine. Right, don't do that. Let's put them in there. So they were SVG bats. Yes, it did. It did. Naughty, naughty. Right. I also have some affinity files that are bats. So these are individual affinity files. And they can also be added to your Assets panel. So if you had artwork from Affinity, you don't need to convert it to anything before you add it to the Assets. So these are bats as well. So let's put them at the end of those bats. And you can see it's loaded those in kind of a greyish colour. And I had the spider's webs as well. So I'd need another subcategory. So let's go and create that. And that is spider's webs down here. So it always names it assets unless you want to change it. So spider's webs. Right. And let's go in there and add those. And that is how you build up your assets. Now, if it's scrapbooking that you're doing, assets are going to be incredibly important. You would be able to resell them. You would be able to buy them if you need them. To do that, you need to be able to export them. So if we export these assets, and we will call these demo assets. Right. And that is saved. It saves them in AF asset format. So we will go and have a look at that down in here. So let's get rid of these demo assets there. That would mean that if you didn't already own those assets, so this is demo Halloween, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the category. And it will say, are you sure? Yep, I'm sure they've all gone. So now it's gone to the calendar creation kit, but it could have gone to the Chinese ones or anything else either. But what I'm going to do is go and import them again. So let's go and find these. It knows it's looking for an asset file. So everything else is dimmed out, but for the assets. And then you open it. And there are your demo Halloween assets. Once you've created a set of assets, back them up anyway. Export them so you've got a backup, because they only exist on this installation of Affinity on this machine. I'm sure everybody is sick to the back teeth of seeing this, but you're going to see it again anyway, which is this is how I organise it. In Dropbox, I have an application support folder. In there, I have a folder for virtually every application that I use. Affinity is one of them. Inside here, I have a range of folders. You will notice that one of them is assets, and that is where the assets live. I have assets for my podcast, for Mike, for personal branding, and I tend, when I'm backing them up, to put the time and date at the end so I know which is which. If some are not in use, they go in the not in use folder. But this means I have access to them on any machine that I can get to Dropbox on. It doesn't even need Dropbox installing, and everything lives in one place. So I don't ever lose anything. That's just a workflow issue, but it's the best way to work. Right, let me whip back in there and have a look. I am done. Bang on time, aren't I clever? Right, let's go into here. So what did we do? We worked with layouts. We worked with layouts that didn't work so well. Then we made some custom ones. We looked at picture frames before we then went into clever things with picture frames and working with stock. Creating assets. We did make magic with shapes. We made hexagonal shapes. We made picture frames. We just made magic. Then bringing it all together at the end, just before we looked at creating custom assets, exporting, importing, and all of the rest. I've actually got the Q&A and the bonus the wrong way around, but never mind. The bonus. Right. A while back, I made a collection of free brushes. So they're not my brushes. I made the collection of them. There is 12 of them. They work in any application that can read Adobe brush files. I have updated this. All of these are available, and the tree brushes that I demonstrated, they're in there. Okay, they are in there as well. But they are also in there with splatters and markers, water splashes, you name it. They are in there. And you will find that at elainegiles.com/scp-products 12-free-brush-collections. And that is the QR code for it. So I'll let you have a look at that. I'm sure Mike's going to put it in the chat, aren't you? Excellent. And then just before the Q&A, if you want to watch any other of my videos, you will find them at youtube.com/ElaineGiles. There is a dedicated playlist called Affinity with Elaine. That playlist only has videos for the very latest version. If you're looking for older videos for publisher, they are still just as relevant, but people panic. You will find those on dedicated playlists, but this playlist is just for this version. And so far we've done the intro, which is everything you need to know to get started with Affinity. Then we did how to do your first layout. We then took a sidestep on deep diving data merge because it was demanded. People, there were big improvements to the data merge, and people wanted to see that. Then we did calendars. We then went on to planners, and then we did a 2-week epic on photo books. And a lot of what we've looked at today could be used in photo books. A lot of what we looked at in photo books and advanced photo books could be used in scrapbooking. Last time we looked at creating a trifold brochure, and this time it was scrapbooking. So I hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, please give the video a like, because YouTube likes, just not quite as much as I do. Also, you can subscribe to the channel, and that way you should be notified and not miss anything when I'm going live. Now, as we always say, better than a like even is a comment, and the number of comments has been dropping off. I'm watching you all. The videos need comments. It's as simple as that. If the videos don't get comments, YouTube don't like the videos. If YouTube don't like the videos, I don't deliver the videos. So comments are YouTube currency. Think of them as that. So please, you can't do that during the live. I know it's annoying. You have to go back later. But to encourage you to go back later, we have a couple of options. Right, we have an emoji, and today's emoji is the colour palette. So what you do is you go back after the event, after we finish broadcasting live, and you put a comment. All you need to do is just put the emoji. How difficult could that be? And that constitutes a comment as far as YouTube's concerned, and that makes me happy. Right, the other reason for going back and adding a comment is that all of the resources that were free today, because I've only had 6 days between sessions and not 7, I haven't made a list of them yet, but I will do, and the list will be available on the page tomorrow. So think of it as an incentive. Right, what have we got next time? Well, I'm planning next time. I can tell you what and I can tell you when, but keep listening. Right, we've got working with colour, which is far more interesting than it sounds. Trust me, if you master colour in Affinity, you will speed up your workflow by at least 20%. Maybe as much as 50% if you don't know anything. And that is going to be next Sunday, not tomorrow, next Sunday. So a week tomorrow at 3 p.m. So that is the time that I usually go live. But I want to hear in the chat and the comments, and you can email me or whatever, to tell me, do you prefer Saturday at 7 or Sunday at 3? Have people said already, Mike? Oh, right. Then that's what you need to put in the chat right now. Do you prefer Sunday at 3 or Saturday at 7? Or possibly Saturday? No, we can't go. That's UK time, yes. So wherever you are, the time it was today or the time it normally is. That's the question. So you put that in the chat while I wrap up. So thank you very much for being with me, particularly if you've not been with me before. If you haven't been with me before, then do say hello. I would love to hear from you. And if you want first notification of everything that I do, including replays, assets and freebies, then you need to go to elainegiles.com/VIP. And that is where you will find my newsletter. But that's been it for Scrapbooking with Affinity by Canva. There's so much more I could cover. If you want to see something else or another session, let me know. But now we're going to go into Q&A, aren't we? I do have questions, do I, Mike?
You do have questions.
Excellent. Right, away you go, Mike.
All right. This is a random question from Tony. He says, can Affinity 3 cope with 80 or more similar sized images? He's doing a project for a local history group.
When you say cope with, do you mean importing it in like a publisher style layout?
Hang on. Sorry, I thought it said 80. It's the old eyes. B0, not 80.
B0. Oh, as a size?
As a size, yeah.
Yes, it can. There are some samples, not in terms of downloadable samples, but there are some samples of billboards being created. So yes, it can. You just manually need to set that up, but yes, it can. That was random. And it wasn't 80, was it?
No.
No, you do need new glasses, Mike.
I know I do. Right, next question is from Tish. who says, where is a good place to get specific brushes? I want like 1 or 2 for a project and don't want to buy a whole pack.
You can get brushes free of charge at a lot of sites. What I will say about brushes is, I was quite surprised when I was putting that free collection together, because I'd done this for years. I've been demonstrating Photoshop since the 90s, and about, say, the mid-noughties to about 2012, you were bombarded with brushes. Free brushes were what people gave away, so you went to their site. There was hundreds of brushes, and I found when I was doing the search for them, a lot had disappeared. So the collection that I put together was like the best of what I could find. But I would say search for brushes. There are certain sites, but when I did that guide to the brushes, the free brushes guide is version 2. And I had to swap out a couple of them because they're just not available anymore. So one of the sites I think was Brush Lovers, and it's gone. So brushes don't seem to be as popular as they were. I don't know why. Maybe there's so many brushes out there that people think there's no point making any more. But I would start with the free ones. And there's a lot of sites that do provide brushes. Some are subscription based, but not many, to be honest. A lot of them are free. So I'd start with the free ones, and I would imagine you'd be able to find what you want. Or you could create brushes. Now, I haven't demonstrated creating brushes in this version of Affinity, but you can create your own brushes. So if you want a session on creating brushes, let me know.
Okay. Creation Cassell says to retrieve, and this was the one with the clip on top of the slide. So it's going back. To retrieve the shadow on that slide image, could you have used a blend mode to make it reappear exactly where it was?
You could do. You would have to have changed the order of the contents. You could have done. I think it's probably better to create a collection. You know, when you're not rushed, you could create a collection of shadows like that and have them as assets. But you may have been able to. The impact of the blend mode would have depended on the interaction between the colour, because it was a solid image, and the image that you're working with. But you may have been able to recover it, yes.
Okay. Pandemonium says, presumably the colour of the film strip can also be changed. Yes,
it can, if that was what you wanted to do.
I got this wrong last week. Serenad N Photo. Can you make the edges of a picture frame softer to blend better with the background?
Yes, you can. So it's just a matter of putting some transparency on there. Yes, you can.
Okay. Tish says, how would you easily add a sepia tone to the negative so it flows better with the edge of the negative?
Probably a blend mode and some colour. So I would have that ready in the assets. So those are the kind of things when you've taken the time and you've created what I created today. So that would have been repurposable, that negative strip. What I would then do is make a range of the frames that fitted it, or you could do it with a global colour. I would have either the assets or the global colour ready to apply to that, because it's something that will be in like my scrapbooking kit. So yes, you can.
Okay. Annie says, presumably it will be possible to have parts of the hexagonal image monochromatic.
Yes, absolutely. The whole thing is editable. That one took a little bit of thinking about, because when you merge the hexagons to create like the single frame, you lose the actual individual frames. So I expanded them and then kept them separate. But if it was separate that you were working with, so they were separate, then each one could be styled however you want. And if you want some kind of blend mode on it, but it doesn't work with the background, then just duplicate the frame and convert it back. So let me show you that. When you have a shape in here, so you could either start off with a shape, or you could start off with a picture frame. But however you start, you are able here to right click and convert to a picture frame. You can also right click and convert it back from being a picture frame. So now it's back to curves. You can convert it to a text frame, I kid you not, and then from there you can convert it again. So you can play around with these and convert it to whatever you want. So hopefully that will help. What I would do then is, if I've got like a hexagon, so do we have a hexagon in here? Oh, we've got some kind of shape, haven't we? Let's do a pie. Right, if I've got that and it's a picture frame and I've got a background colour and I want to apply something to it, but it doesn't look right, then what I would do is, let's say that is our picture frame. So I'll actually do this. Right, so that is our picture frame. So I haven't got a copy of it at that point, right? It's just a picture frame at that point, and I don't have a copy. But I can hold the Option key down and drag it, and then convert it to curves. Its shape is identical, so I can, I'm going to put colour in it so we know which is which, right? I'm going to put that behind the picture frame, and then if I change the blend mode or do anything with the picture frame, it isn't going to interact with the background of the page, it's going to interact with its own personal background. So if this was, let's say like financial results or something, right, then this one would be results background, and I would take the time and name that. And then obviously these two would make sense to put in a group. And now whatever you do with it is going to happen independently of the background. So that is how you would do that. What else have we got?
Jamie says, is pCloud suitable for this asset management too?
Yes, any cloud service would be, although I'd leave iCloud alone myself. I've not had much joy with iCloud, as neither has anybody else I've ever heard of. But iCloud's a bit finicky. pCloud would work in exactly the same way as Dropbox if you have the pCloud client installed. Now, I don't. I only have Dropbox installed, so I don't install OneDrive or any of the others. I only have Dropbox installed. I do use pCloud and OneDrive and all of the others, but I don't have the client installed. I don't want too much network traffic for that. But as long as you can get to the files, it would work in exactly the same way. I have had people say like, oh, is that your application support folder? It's not the Mac application support folder. It's my application support folder. So I'm not sure I've ever actually shown that. So let me show you that. So what we've got here, hang on a minute. Let's go to the scrapbooking thing. Right. So if you use the Go menu and you hold down the Option key, you can go to your library. Now, if you don't know what you're doing, don't do this. If you're just looking, fine, but don't delete anything. It's hidden for a reason. This is one of the folders that contains the magic that makes your Mac work. And there is a folder in here called Application Support. And when you go to it, it's apps. It's apps that you have, configurations, settings, all kinds of stuff. If you're troubleshooting, you may need to go into this folder. But all I did was take the concept of an application support folder and put it in Dropbox. So I use an organization system called Para, which are these 4 folders. I also have an inbox because, you know, everybody needs an inbox. I didn't create that. Dropbox did, and I can't get rid of it. And public should be in root as far as I'm concerned. Anything I share goes in there. That leaves me this application support folder. It is not my Mac's application support folder. It is my personal application support folder. So if we look inside my Affinity one, it's got everything in there. This is stuff from Affinity and their press releases and press assets. This is my assets. These are my brushes, my colour palettes. Now, these that start with CP are my collection points. So all of my files are in there. All of my demos are in there. These are my default settings. These are my export presets. You can't actually export an export preset. But if you go into here, what I've done is taken a screenshot of it. So that is the old version. That is version 2. I took a screenshot of it and I save it as export presets because, can you remember all that? No, me neither. So if I send something off to Manchester United for print, which I have done, that is what they need. I can't back it up. So I can't swap it from machine to machine, and I can't back it up. So I do the next best thing, which is create a screenshot of it. But as far as I'm concerned, that is the same as me backing up my fonts or my object styles or my shortcuts. You look in the shortcuts, you'll see I have custom shortcuts, and this is what they look like. So it offers to save them as Affinity shortcuts. I tag the time and date on the end, and I know which is the most recent. If I had this on multiple machines, which I don't, then I would also tag the machine name after it, because they don't synchronize. There's nothing clever about that. I can make my shortcuts on one machine, go to another machine and feel like it's broken. So I save everything out. And then, of course, there's my templates. So these are my actual live templates. You saw in the dialog box, I showed you the YouTube ones. So that's where the templates live. They live on Dropbox. And I would back them up and then I would put them on another cloud service. But live, they are on Dropbox. And that is how I organize it. So this application support folder that I talk about is not my Mac application support folder, and the system would work just as well if you're on Windows. It's just a practical thing. So everything is backed up, including these, which are, I can't remember what updates were, but I can remember tutorials, that's stuff I've created. And the collection point for live sessions is when I do a live session, I put all the data in there. Then I've got my own files and I've got my demo files, and everything is in one place in this Affinity folder in Dropbox. That is how I organise it. Okay.
Jane says, can I move assets to a new category?
Yes, you can. You can just drag and drop the assets around. So these we have here, if we decided that one of these had a bat on them, like you nearly did this morning. Right, so let's say this cube goes 15. You can drag these anyway. You get the blue line, and when you drop it, that's where they appear. So you can either drag and drop them into the right category, or you can organise them in here and then put them wherever you want, like that. So yes, you can.
Okay. Jamie says, I've asked a couple of times since release, but curious to know if you've gone back to version 2 for anything specific.
No, I haven't. Despite the fact I've had corrupted files. I've got to stick with it.
And Phil Lynn Crafty says, I'm currently rewatching your video on making calendars. How do I make one calendar an asset so I can create all 12 months?
Make one calendar an asset.
Says you did a demo in one of the planner page tutorials. And if you know which one, I'll find the link.
I've no idea which one. I think there is a playlist for planners. So it would be in one of the videos that's on that playlist.
Okay,
but
I'll have a look.
Let me have a look what I've got in. This is very much a work in progress. But my calendar creation kit, I do wish you could see this, crying out loud. I normally have this where it's in a list view, only because they took away the ability to have a light interface, which means I can't see the icons because they're black.
On a page.
Oh, if only they could just leave things alone and not break them. So what I've done here is, these are already created. So what I do is just drag a calendar on. When I drag a calendar on, it's doing a lot more than just dragging a table on. Because if I go into my textiles now, you can see I've got the calendar creation kit textiles added. So if I just undo that, I had the base style and nothing else. But as soon as I add one of these months, it starts adding styles over here, which means that I can add, say, January, February, and March, and then I can start formatting it. So if I get all of these, I can make mini calendars of them, I can make bigger calendars of them, things like that. So all these is editable tables. Now, if I then wanted, so if we zoom into this, if you look at that, you can see that they're black and it's Avenir at 9 points. But if I go into the styles here and I edit these, something, simple like a colour, because that's like blindingly obvious that I've made a change.
How did you make a calendar an asset, I think was the question.
Oh, right. Well, that's how you use them, and that's the fact that they've got the styles with them. But, to make it an asset is relatively straightforward. I made a table, and I populated it with the numbers, and then added it back. So if we go to our demo one, so this is my demo one. We made this before one of the other sessions. So this is just a table. It is nothing clever. It's just a table. All right. So these would get added back over here. I'd probably make a subcategory to organize them. All right. So let's go into there and call that calendars. And then all I need to do is select it. With it selected, add from selection. And just rinse and repeat. Alternatively, if you don't want to do the add from selection dance for all of them, which isn't bad even for 12 months, these could be saved out of it as individual Affinity files, and they could be added en masse like that. But it's just a simple matter of make whatever you want and then add it back. If I wanted a Q1, I could put these in place. Let's group them together. And let's say that that is Q1. So in my layers here, I'm going to call that Q1. I suppose I should say what year, shouldn't I? So 2026, Q1. And with that selected, go and add from selection. And now I've got Q1. So I've deleted that. Let me make a new file. Prove the point that it's definitely there. Right, and then add that back. So it adds all three at the same time. It will also, while it's doing that, add the styles, and it will give you January, February, and March because they were each individual when they were styled. So that's how you can add anything as an asset and drag it back as however you want. So just because I've made assets of the individual months doesn't mean that I can't then make a different asset of it. I could have different styles with those and do it that way. It really doesn't matter. It's really flexible. So hopefully that does answer that question.
And that's it.
You sure?
Yes.
Right, last shout for questions then. Right, let me move that out of the way. Okay. Right. So do we have any last questions before we head off? That create category, you create a category which is the top level and a subcategory for the groupings within it. You can only go one level deep. You can't create like nested levels. So category is the actual group of assets itself, which have a name, which is selectable from the drop down. And the subcategories, they are open and closable. So let me go back into there. Why are you not moving? Right. These can be folded up and they are individually renamable. So that one was appearance, I think. But you can't go any further than that. But in here, I mean, if I show you like a real one, like the personal branding, there's a lot in there. These are the sidebars. These are sidebars with shadow that I don't use very often, so they're folded up. These are my signatures in white, red and black. These are the branding for slides. This is the sidebar that you will see on the slides. The LD is light to dark. It means they go from light at the top to dark at the bottom. Guess what DL is? Dark at the top and light at the bottom. All right, again, I don't use those that often. Then I've got the icons for version 3, which I know there's arguments whether it's version 3 or not, whatever. It's easy. I know what I mean. I've got the icons for version 2. I even have the icons for version 1 in there. I chose not to delete them, just because if I am doing a tutorial that happens to be dedicated to version 2, it makes far more sense for me to have the icons in here rather than, delete them and get rid and then have to go and dig them out from somewhere. So there's only the version 3s that are open. But you'll notice in here that I've got flashes as well. And these things are where I put that there. You'll see that on my slides. So I have those available. I don't actually use them inside Affinity much. They get far more use inside PowerPoint, but they're still there. So that is what a real selection of assets looks like. And if I ever make any changes to that, I add anything or even take it away, then I will export that. So let me actually do it so you can see it. So this is a real set of assets. So I'm going to export them. I'm going to put them in the right place, which is my Affinity application support. It's going in assets. It doesn't give you a name because you can call it what you like, but it makes sense to call it what it is, which is personal branding. And then I put the date and time after it. So it's been saved today, and that was the time. And now that's backed up. So every time I make a change, I back them up. Now, you might think, well, that's overkill. Yeah, if you've never had a hard drive fail, great. But I have. So I do that all the time. And then I would delete the old ones. Now, I do that with virtually everything. I'm just pondering here which of these drives we could see. Let me have a quick look. Nope, you're not in there. You're in here, aren't you? Right, there we go. Right, so I have a backup folder. This happens automatically. Right, these are episodes of MacBites that go into the backup folder. You will see that they're on one of my external drives in my number 4 archive folder, which means technically you can be able to delete these because they're just backups. But this Scrivener one here, you look at that, it backs up automatically. And there's quite a few in there. Let's have a look. How much detritus have I got? 51.5 gig of backups. And they go back to, there you go, 2024. I could delete those because if you look at them, that's MacBites and that's the comms. And that's MacBites and that's the comms. I'm not going to roll back that far. But it happens automatically. So I just ignore it. There's one that I did in a demonstration for Sarah. So it automatically is backing up. You can never have too many backups. Now, what I do with this, sometimes I did used to do it on a monthly basis and just delete them. But, there's enough room on the drive. But if I wanted to save 50 gig, I would just go back to maybe beginning of December and say that all of these could then be deleted. So I don't keep them forever and ever. I just keep them until, I've got like maybe 10 and then I delete 5. Doesn't matter how you work, as long as you're making some kind of backup, I would say. Right, okay, did we ever get any more
questions?
Yeah, I thought we would if we asked for questions. Right, where you go?
Solmat Solhat says, you use the same style group and names for all your calendar assets to avoid getting duplicates as you drag them in.
I do. Now, the issue with styles is, as far as I'm concerned, they don't work right. I think if you add it, you should keep the style that you get, but it doesn't. It makes another one, and that happens all the time. So when I'm making mini calendars, I would add all 12. I do not have those styles, only exist in the assets. So I wouldn't be dragging them into a document which already had calendar styles in. I'd be dragging them into a document that did not have the calendar creation styles in. But even if I'm only creating for the first 6 months, I make it a good practice to drag in all of them. So drag in all 12 months. You can then delete the second 6 months, but the styles are correct. So just a pro tip, drag them all in first. Because if you don't, if you drag them in and then you edit one of the styles, when you drag the next one in, it will duplicate it. But it won't if you didn't edit it. So the trick is not editing it, which to me is like, at least give me an option. Come on. I could hold down a magic key or something, but they do not give us that option. So it's how best to work around it. Right, what else?
Okay, one more question, and it's from Joho. And he wants to know what you use for the daytime shortcut. Now, bear in mind, I think he's a PC user.
For what shortcut?
The datetime shortcut.
Oh, it's an application called Typinator. It's only available on the Mac. But it would work if you wanted to do it this way in Raycast. So what you would do is you would make a snippet. And what happens is I use Shift key, which is in the top left-hand corner on a UK keyboard. We've had many an argument as to where on earth it is on an American keyboard. If you've defined it, do let me know. But it looks like 2 S's. And I use that key followed by D for date and T for time. So if I want to put the date in, it would be section key D. If I want the date and time, it would be section key DT. So that is a type of application called a text expander. I type one thing and it converts it to another. So I have shortcuts for my email address, my website, MacBytes, all of the MacBytes shows I've got shortcuts for. So if I actually, I think I can show you that. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at Cut Edit, which is just a text editor. So in here, if I type section key, DT, press enter, gives me the date and time. If I type section key, MacBytes, 0202, it gives me the URL for it. Oh, that's amazing. Because who wants to type out all of that for 202 episodes of MacBytes? So I've got lots of options like that. I think I've got about 3,000 shortcuts set up. But it's called Typinator, but that is Mac only. But Raycast does it on Mac and Windows, and it's completely free. So that is a good way to do it. Right, was that it?
Jamie says, could Elaine possibly consider doing a Raycast master session covering all the best tricks like the Typinator snippets?
Yeah, I could contemplate that. It sounds more after hours-ish than it does YouTube-ish, but we'll add it to the list. Are these the ones that Jamie will find out that he's got installed and he hasn't used?
Yeah.
Those ones. Because that happened to you, didn't it?
It did.
Both of you, the last time I did a demonstration, said, oh, that's amazing. In fact, I'll be showing one thing next week, or if not two. And both of you said, that's amazing. And you went to install it, and guess what? You already had it installed. Yeah. I think the key with Raycast is actually using the stuff, don't you?
Mm.
What else have we got?
That's it.
Right, okay, that's it then. Right, let's have a look. Okay, I'm seeing things that I'm only seeing half of a conversation of because I haven't seen much of the chat at all.
Just don't forget your comments when we've clicked stop.
Yeah, don't forget your comments. No, we definitely need comments. I've noticed that since we came back with the first session on the new version of Affinity, if it were a graph, which obviously Mike could do because he's the Excel expert, if it were a graph, just imagine something dropping off the end. That's the comments started off with 100 and odd comments and they're now down to like 15. Come on. I know you're there and I know that you can put a comment. So remember, our icon today is the palette icon. That's all you need to do. Just add a comment, put the palette icon and you're done. You're done.
We'll press stop. You hang around, hit refresh and type your comment.
That would work well. Excellent, Mike. Excellent. Right. Okay. Jam is going to be first one in with the comments as well. Excellent. Right. Okay, then we're going to head off. Don't forget next week is working with colour in Affinity. I nearly said photo then, but no, it's Affinity. Affinity by Canva. There will be some Mac stuff in there. There will be some tutorials and tips and tricks for how to deal with it on Windows, because Windows is a bit weird, isn't it? It's not as fully featured as the Mac, but there are things that you can do and we will be sharing them. So for the moment, I'm going to say goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
We will both see you next time. Stay safe, guys.